All right, and welcome to another episode of Lions Guy Podcast. On today's show, we've got Mr. Dave Wolcott, who is a veteran Marine captain. He's also entrepreneur of a number of businesses, which we'll talk about. Author of a book called The Holistic Wealth Strategy, and today's CEO and founder of Pantheon Investments, and through that is an equity partner in about $450 million of real estate asset. And Dave, I wanted to have Dave on the show to kind of talk. We have not talked about financial, the aspect, focal area of finance as a high performer and an entrepreneur and all the folks that are out there listening. And I was excited to kind of talk to Dave and jump into this area because I know he and I are aligned in a lot of things that we know and philosophically, but he's way more into it than I am. And I wanted to bring him on and kind of pick his brain and share the wealth, if you will. So Dave, welcome, and give us a quick who you are and what do you do?
Yeah, thanks, Dale. Happy to be here. Have the opportunity to connect with the listeners. Just I guess a little bit about my background. Probably like a lot of listeners, I was raised in a middle class family. Conventional wisdom was bashed into my brain about you've got to go to school, get good grades, and then you're going to be able to get a job, right? And go out into the world and be successful. So I kind of forged down that path. I thought that was the recipe for success. I went to George Washington in DC and then did the ROTC path so I could get into the Marine Corps. Just kind of had an itch to go serve my country, give back and really challenge myself, learn a lot about myself in the Marine Corps, which I know we share that history. And had a fantastic time in the Marine Corps, worked with some phenomenal people, saw some amazing things that really gives you a whole different perspective in life and how you see things, a different lens. And then as I transitioned out of the Marines, I got into corporate America, not exactly sure what I was going to do, but was trying to take those, traits that were you could use transitionally, right? Like leadership and teamwork and things like that. So I focused on that, got into the corporate world for about 4 or 5 years. I was quickly very dismayed, losing that sense of mission, that sense of purpose, right? And really doing something, impactful and meaningful. So I made a transition after that into the entrepreneurial world, started my own technology consulting business. And at the same time, I read one of the most impactful books for me was actually Robert Kiyosaki's Cash Flow Quadrant, where I learned about really this cash flow quadrant, right, which is very unique. And it gave me an insight. It didn't really give you a play-by-play, but it gave you an insight that, hey, if you want to play the inside game and be successful in the world of capitalism, you need to be a business owner and an investor, right?
Yeah.
Those were the two keys to success. So I started to become obsessed with that, right? With figuring out, how are the wealthy really becoming successful? I spent the past 20 years kind of working on that, building on my own personal wealth, through building businesses as well as putting a strategy in place. And now today, I'm really just trying to share that with other people so that they don't have to make the mistakes that I did, right? And we can cut their learning in half and really grow their wealth. And it's interesting as well, Dale, because, wealth to me, right, there's a big difference between being wealthy and being rich. This isn't about, being high income or whatever, right? This is about wealth, which to me, the thing that really resonates, this is all about freedom. Right. And I think, a lot of your audience is entrepreneurs, as is ours, because a lot of times you become an entrepreneur to be free. And the freedom is there's 4 dimensions to it. Right. So one is financial freedom, of course, which kind of gives you the oxygen to have the experiences and do the things that you want to do. But there's also freedom of purpose. Right. And in doing what you want to do, getting out of bed every day, being completely motivated to do that, having an impact in the world, that purpose is really, really important for us. Also having freedom of relationship, to work with quality people that you want to be working with. And I think we've all had jobs where we've been stuck working with people we don't want to work with, that don't inspire us or bring us down and everything. And the last one is freedom of location, right? And especially in this time frame, right, post COVID, to be able to work wherever you want in the world, right, or do what works for your environment to make you successful.
Yeah, and I mean, I love where you took that, right? Because that's what I've come to learn, and I try to preach myself to high performers because I think like a lot of people that I've come to know that listen to this, or they're just trying to they they're off, right? They're stuck. They go something's like they're kind of following that given path, that mainstream conventional stuff, and it's not quite shaken out, right? And that's what it always comes back to for me in these conversations, which is freedom, right? I literally walk around with red, white, and blue freaking socks on every day because not necessarily because of patriotism and go USA, but the symbolism of that, right? The freedom, right? Freedom to live by your own choices. And that's why I was excited to get you on and kind of dive into this today, because it does come down to that, right? Because you and I too, right? I think I was broke into this with reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then I grabbed them all. I've read all Kiyosaki's books. There's only a few I haven't read at this point, but I've been asked before as well, like which one did I like the most, get the most out of, and it was Cash Flow Quadrant. I say that as well. I just kind of Rich Dad Poor Dad, I feel like is fundamental to break that. I need a good job, I need a 401k, I need all that safety, right? Because he talks a lot about you know trying to play it safe, and you find and he does a really good job. And people who don't know that book, go get it. I'll link it in the show notes or whatever. Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. And it for me really just broke me out of that, right? Because I go grow up, get good grades, go to college, get a good job, go work for the government so you get the benefit. Like there was all that, and there is not a lot of freedom the way that I think we're going to talk about it today there, right? You're enslaved a bit. And there's that saying, what is it? A job is what they give you to forget your dreams or whatever it is. Like there's that. And so
Yeah,
anyways,
yeah, and the other interesting point about this, Dale, is right. We're all brought up right in the same society, and we go to different academic schools, vocational schools, whatever. We go through the military. I mean, all of these different types of trainings out there, but nowhere is there education on how to protect and grow your wealth,
yeah.
right? And so we have a lot of entrepreneurs, right, that are in our investor community that have done very well through an exit and built their businesses and things like that. But still, people just don't have a true wealth strategy, right, to do that because they never learned. I mean, no one ever learned, what that is. And so everyone then, of course, follows the $30 trillion financial services industry, right, and follows what they're preaching, which is very different than what ultra high net worth are doing.
Right, absolutely. And because you're right, they don't know any better. And that's in essence, the honor that I think we need to give to Robert Kiyosaki is what early 80s, he was like, how do I go help teach people this basic finance, and it's not all because there's the other models, right? Like what's it, David, gosh, I should know his name, but what's the guy that makes you pay off all your debt and, you
Dave
know,
Ramsey.
Dave
Yeah.
Ramsey, there you go. I've read his
Yep.
stuff too, but it's all about, you know, um, it's a bit,
That's a middle class. It's a middle class philosophy
yeah,
and approach and mindset and everything. And one of the first things we talk about, I think that's fascinating because after talking to hundreds of different investors, and as we created our wealth strategy, right, the first step is all about mindset.
yeah,
And so many people that I'm sure you talk to, even that I talk to every day, a lot of people don't want to learn new ideas no matter what their net worth is, whatever their position is. They're not open to new ideas. So you have to be open to learning something new, and you also have to be very curious. and say why,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's kind of interesting, right, that financial planners will give you a certain amount of advice. They don't actually need to be accredited investors to be able to sell you their products.
Hmm.
Whereas in the private equity world, you need to be an accredited investor to position, these types of offerings. So it's very different. We're taught different things, and I think, you know, uh, look, we're consuming all of this information, right? We're bombarded with different media and different things, and that's what we've heard, right, through our neighbors, through our friends, through our family, and things. Well, they're putting all their money in their 401k. They're paying off their house, right? They're doing all of these things but you know what? That's really middle class advice. And if you want to break that mold, you need to be able to ask why and start to learn some new strategies.
Yeah. What? I guess. So, what was growing up like for you? Right. You talked about where. I mean, where'd you grow up at? Where was it? City,
Yeah,
small
so
town?
I grew up in Connecticut. We were probably about 2 hours from New York City, so a little bit of a bedroom community for people kind of living outside. It was fairly rural, but decent schools and again, I think, just kind of a middle class upbringing. We didn't have a ton of things. And, we learned ethics and how to work hard. And, that was kind of, drilled into us. And I did have the opportunity to travel. I traveled to Europe, when I was younger. And then, of course, in the Marines, I've actually been to 6 continents and over 40 countries. And I think traveling just gives you such an amazing perspective on the world and how other people are living, how economies are working, how different businesses are working. And when you can have that different lens, it helps you, shape your own, purpose and what's important for you.
And I think some gratitude as well, right? And you get out there and see the rest of the world. I think you take for granted a bit of how we have it here, and then you can get out there and look at some other countries that are first world countries, and you get there and go, wow. Okay, you guys are still living in the 80s, right? And things like that. But it's a first world country. That's always something I appreciated as far as getting out and about as well. As far as coming up and going to school, like what did you go to college for? What were you hoping to kind of like? What was the path that you were on initially, as far as why you went to college, what you expected to get out of it, and be doing afterwards?
Yeah, so I mean, unfortunately, I was not a prodigy child. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And in fact, I was not a fan of school, learning all of these different topics. That just didn't, frankly, just didn't interest me, whether they were science or philosophy. I did actually have some interest in finance at the time. That was kind of interesting. But my original path was I thought I would go into the Marine Corps and then get into criminal law at some point, and then maybe work for the State Department or something of that nature, because I liked the travel aspect. And again, kind of coming through the military ranks, that would have been a good transition. But yeah, it was really more, and I got a bachelor's degree, right? So it was very general. My
Yeah.
training was very general. But having looking back on it, and as my kids enter college, I think it was valuable. The real thing that I learned out of the traditional education system is I learned how to learn.
Mm,
That was really, I think, my biggest takeaway, rather
right.
than a particular subject or deep things. But I've learned how to learn, and if you bring that to today, it's just amazing how many resources there are to learn. But you have to push yourself out there. I mean, I'm a part of a number of mastermind groups. I'm part of a strategic coach group. And, it's amazing when you surround yourself with like-minded people who are pushing the envelope in many different directions, different industries, different businesses. You learn so much through people, through osmosis, right? Through your network. There's also, so many training courses and things now that you can take online. and learn about some of these concepts that, we never really had, the opportunity to learn. And actually, this is another segue here, Dale, that I can kind of go into, and it's important to me as well because, like I said, what drives me a lot is, I'm really trying to help a lot of people who, give them these insights that I never had, avoid these pitfalls, increase your learning. Right. So you can scale faster. And, my kids are just kind of finishing college, kind of going through that. But one of the most important things I think about learning is actually to understand yourself and your unique ability. So, what really makes you tick? And, a lot of us have heard about Myers Briggs, and maybe we've done some things like that, right? But there's more extensive things that you can do, like the Clifton Strengths Profile. Unique ability has been amazing to me. And what unique ability is it's really measuring the conative ability in your brain, which is really your hard wiring to say, hey, how quick are you with an idea? Can you take an idea and just completely run with it? Or are you someone that says, maybe I research the idea, I want to talk to some more people, do some due diligence, things like that. That's one example. There's like 4 key areas. One is, also how good of an implementer you are, right? So are you a very visual person, things like that. But what happens with that is you start to really identify all of these traits within yourself on the things that are really good. And then, as an entrepreneur, especially, the idea is actually to double down on these strengths because that's what you're good at. That's what you're going to get rewarded for. And it comes naturally to you. And then the kicker on top of that, which I know is, one of the questions or one of the things we've talked about as well, is that's what also gives you your energy,
Mm.
right? When you're focused on what you do well, what comes naturally to you, that's very energizing. When you find yourself in situations where you're de-energized, so for me, it's like doing administrative type things. It's very de-energizing for me, right? So, I send that to my executive assistant, and you handle all this, right? Let me follow up on what energizes me and what works really well for me. So these insights, I think, were super illuminating for me, and it wasn't until much later in my entrepreneurial career that I really got much smarter on how I'm hardwired and learning more about myself. And so for anyone who's really at any stage of your career or life, the more you can learn about yourself and plug yourself in that way is really huge. And you can even go the next level, right? And this is how you actually create teams, right? So just, that as the perfect example, right? For me, administrative things really bog me down and are de-energizing. Whereas when I give it to my executive assistant, she eats it up. She loves that type
Yeah.
of work, And I used to feel bad in the old days when you delegate work out. It's like, oh, you're just giving the crappy work, to someone else because you don't want to do it, right? And, you're doing it that. She loves it. Right. So, that's what's really powerful about building a team and scaling. And also, this whole thing, right, around freedom and where you're going, it's also fulfillment. Right. I mean, you want to live a life of, doing the things that energize you, inspire you, things that you're having fun doing. So why not do that to your natural abilities and what you're good at, what you get rewarded for versus filling your time with other things. The guy who runs the entire program is strategic coach, Dan Sullivan. He actually lives 100% of his time in his business is only on his unique ability. He only, which is basically center stage work. So
Mm.
pretty much either, coaching or being on stage. That's what he does. That's all he does. All the backstage, everything else in the business is taken care of by other team members.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. And that's one of like the 3 tenets Alliance guide is establish clarity, have courage, and lead the way. And that's speaks to the importance of establishing clarity, right? Knowing who you are, what you like doing, what you don't like doing, like you said, what your unique abilities are and your strengths and weaknesses. because you're right. Like those things that we're weak in or just not excited to do, if we haven't made a practice of one, identifying it, but two, identifying it with intention of delegating it, right, and finding the people that are excited to do that stuff, it doesn't get done, right? We avoid it, and and I like, yeah, I smiled when you said it, right? Like in the beginning of starting my first company, I didn't want to do the administrative stuff. I didn't want to do it, and it just sat. And I always found something else to do instead of it. And my wife was my second full time employee because the business was starting to take it off, but she could do that. She liked doing that, and like a lot of businesses sometimes do. My wife came in and she became the office manager and just ran with all that stuff, made sure it was taken care of, and that freed me to, one, know that it was getting done, and two, then go focus on the things I wanted to do. And that was an early lesson, thankfully, and still how I operate today. Like you said, getting assistance and the like in, and you kind of run into the what needs to be done, and then who needs to do it, right? Like, okay, who, because one of Sullivan's books, right, is like who, not what,
Who,
or
not how.
who, not how.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. To
exactly.
that principle. So, so you went to college specifically to join the Marine, like become an officer? Was that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I knew that I wanted to become an officer
Oh wow.
and, do the ROTC route. And, I didn't really have much of a family background in the military. I think a lot of people are influenced that way, but I just thought, like I said, it would be an incredible opportunity to serve my country, to travel, and, to really challenge myself.
Sure.
Right.
What did your
So.
job end up being in the Marine Corps?
So I started off as an infantry officer. I kind of have this knack of just kind of like working to the top of things. So I thought, I mean, for me, I said, how can you join the Marines and, go do, communications or something? Now, in hindsight, that maybe some of those skills would have been intelligent, right? To learn and then transition from there. But I thought, hey, going in the Marine Corps, I got to go into infantry, right? I mean, I need to challenge myself all the way. And I sure did. So I went into infantry, then got into reconnaissance, spent some time in recon with just an amazing elite group of people doing some impressive things. And I was only in for 4 years, but like I said, I had a fantastic time. And there's things in the military that you just don't learn, right, in other academic trainings and things, right? So things like leadership, right? Leadership is key. Teamwork is key. Integrity, core values, right? Those are just such key principles that no one learns anywhere else. As I watch my kids grow up, I mean, if you're not teaching that in your household, they're not going to learn that anywhere else. But the military, really instills that, and of course, the Marine Corps is, really the elite. We can say that in this room here today, that that it's just so important for the Marine Corps. So I love that, that passion and that pride that comes, for the Marine Corps, and really for all veterans as well. But
What do you think? So what do you think you learned in the Marine Corps that still impacts you to this day? What are some things that maybe you picked up there that are core to your success thus far?
I think one of the biggest things is drive. And if you've ever read a great book, is High Performance Habits by
Yeah.
Brendan Burchard. And he talks about one of those is having necessity,
Yeah.
right? And I think to some extent you're hardwired with some necessity, and that's probably why I gravitated to the Marine Corps. But just having that, that energy, that deep sense of, making things happen, every day is, I learned a lot about that in the Marines. And that's really, I still have that, today. I still feel like my blood is green,
Yeah.
right? From the Marine Corps. I mean, it runs so deep. I still, even to this day, after being out for over 20 years, I mean, I'll still have dreams. I have visions. I have, all kinds of things from whatever it been, jungle warfare school, or, we were in Somalia when all of that happened. Um, so I think having necessity, to answer your question, I think is really important. And then also, yeah, just to add to that, the military training is really like, you're on a, you're on a top sports team, right? And you're playing for the Super Bowl. And, when we went into combat, that was, the actual game, right? And to see such a well oiled machine of everyone doing what they're supposed to be doing in the face of danger, taking fire, uncertain environment, things like that, leadership, to see leadership, to see that delegated down at other levels and people making decisions, and everything working seamlessly, is really, really impressive. And as I graduated into the corporate, world and saw how things were done there, it's really a lot of management. It's not necessarily leadership.
Yeah.
And the difference is, I mean, leaders, people are so inspired, they will do the right thing. They will make the right judgment call without being told, what to do.
Right.
Right. So that's, what you want to try to drive, into an organization. But it's pretty amazing to really see that happen.
Yeah, and I really, again, just like with the wealth versus rich, the leadership versus management, again, it sings to me, right? Because you're right. The lead, I always try to like break that down to people and say you lead people, you manage processes, right? And sometimes we put managers in that position where they don't attend to the people, they just manage the processes, and their leadership is bad. On Lines Guide, we do it on Thursdays now, but that's why we've kind of departmentalized leadership a little bit just to talk about it. It's really important. Like I think, to me and my philosophy, I think leadership is at the root of success of any organization, team, or whatever. Like I mean, name a successful team or organization that has bad leadership or toxic leadership, right? It's going to be hard to find.
Yeah.
And or it's going to be finite in its shelf life, and because certainly there's markets and trends that'll blow up overnight and whatever, but they could have had a poor leader at the helm, but it was the product or whatever outweighed that for the moment. It can't sustain, right? It's always going to come back to leadership in my mind. So I really, like I said, honor that, because it's so in today's world, we're starving for good leadership, and I think that's just a huge opportunity for everyone just to be better leaders, period. Like whether you don't have to be in charge at work or whatever, just be a better leader of yourself, your family, the things that you care about. It starts with you, and having that leadership mindset of being your own CEO, it's vital, just with the essence of leadership. So I really,
Yeah, that's really spot on, Dale, right? Because I think you're right. A lot of people think about leadership as, I've got to be some, corporate CEO, or, leading a top sports team or something like that. But it does start with yourself. And you can demonstrate leadership to your family. It takes leadership every day, and, your physical training, things you're doing for your health. And you want to be able to really exemplify that, right? And you'll see, as you start to make those improvements, that it starts to become very attractive, also having a leadership type personality and presence, right? And others will flock to you,
yeah.
which is a great place to be.
Yeah, again, because they're starving for it. And even, this from what we got taught in the Marine Corps, which is like the leadership traits and principles. I tell people all day long, number one leadership principle to me is setting the example. You don't have to be in charge of anyone, but if you set an example, people will follow you. And that could go either way. You can set a bad example and people will follow you too, because people, again, are starving for some form of leadership. So I think the onus is on all of us to be those good leaders, get out there and set that example, and we will influence people for the better. And you know, I jokingly tell people all the time, like, I'm trying to save the world through better leadership, right? I don't necessarily talk like leadership, you know, like it's a part of the formula, so to speak. So it's really really important all around. When so what so from there you get out of the Marine Corps. I think you said you went corporate. So what's the path? How did you, you know, end up with multiple businesses? What was, you know, I guess let's take one step back. What did you how was it coming from the Marine Corps into the civilian world as far as how
Yeah,
things
that
operated?
was a difficult transition. So I eventually ended up going through headhunters that look for, you know, junior military officers that are, you know, transitioning. And I'll never forget, I had one interview, and it was at some manufacturing plant in Delaware.
Mm.
And I walked in, and, you know, whatever, you're going to be in charge of a bunch of people like in some factory. And I just thought, I mean, I almost got sick. I'm like, look, I mean, I've literally at 22 years old, I mean, I had millions of dollars of equipment I was responsible for. I was responsible for over 50 Marines' lives and their welfare. And, you know, now you're going to like stick me in some kind of thing. I mean, that was just not my vision at all. So it was a difficult transition, but I did end up working for a company that did international logistics and transportation, which again, I like that whole international aspect. So they did a lot of shipping across the world. And I was in a sales capacity there. Which was great because I realized, you know, part of my unique ability as well is I love dealing with people. I love creating relationships with people. I also love solving problems, you know, for me. So I did have, you know, my first taste at, you know, kind of doing that. I think that was good. But shortly thereafter, I transitioned into, you know, this was like right around 2000. And, you know, I had to get into the technology industry because there was just so much innovation going on, so much excitement. So I transitioned and worked for a consulting company, probably about 1,500 people, you know, a company a little bit like Accenture, but like a regional type company. And there I really got to double down on, you know, solving problems, you know, sophisticated problems for, you know, large companies and things, and creating those relationships to be able to do that. So I did enjoy that. But it's funny, I took this, I think it was on Harvard Review one time on LinkedIn or something. There was this little 10, 15 question test that said, you know, are you an entrepreneur or are you not? And I scored like on the max on this, like, you know, little thing. It's like, wow, I wish I had learned that, you know, maybe 10 years ago or something that told, you know, because I couldn't hold down a job for more than 18 months. I bounced around a bit, and I just always felt that, hey, I could do things faster, better, cheaper than, you know, the people. The leadership that I had was completely lacking. I mean, there were some great people in there, you know, don't get me wrong, but I still always felt that I could kind of do things better. I could create more value for my clients. Sometimes I was in a position where my principles might get, you know, twisted. And I really did not like that. Right.
Yeah.
And especially in, you know, the world of
And
Wall
you're
Street and
saying not principles like stakeholders, but your values, morals.
values
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. Because right, everyone is driven towards these quarterly results that, you know, you have to do whatever it takes to do that, even though, let's say you've been developing a relationship for 2 years and you're going to pull out all the stops and throw that away just so you can, you know, do one, you know, something in one quarter to make those results. You know, so I didn't feel like I felt compromised in those situations. And I really didn't like that. So all of these things really pointed me to starting my own business. And at the same time, you know, just going back to wealth, right? So we have 4 kids, including triplets. right? So at the time, we had a 2-year-old and our triplets were just born. And I'm talking to our financial planner, and he's saying the same thing people are saying today: is, look, the market's going to go up, the market's going to go down, but you'll probably make 7% over the long haul. So you're going to build towards this nest egg. And oh, by the way, now I have 4 college educations to pay for, and raising of these kids. And it's like, no matter how much money you made, it just like, it didn't move the needle.
Yeah.
Right. So the entrepreneur in me and the problem solver wanted to find a different way about how could I really provide for my family, because this model just was not working for me.
Right. And this was while you're employed with that consultancy?
Yeah, with that company,
Yeah. So
exactly.
was
So
that
that,
the
yeah.
point that you said, "Hey, I need to go do my own thing because I'm kind of capped, with my financial
Yeah, this was
potential"?
all right around 2000, and
Yeah.
actually Rich Dad had just come out. I think it
Mm,
was like 99 that first book actually came out. So I read that. I was frustrated with some other things, and I did work for another company after that, and had transitioned back to the DC area. After that, still working for technology solutions company, worked there for a little while before I started my own business. And I think all of those things just led me up to it took probably almost 2 years to start
right.
everything, and I still had to support a family. It wasn't like I was 25, right, and had an endless runway and things like that. Supporting a family, so your nut's a little bit bigger to start a business, bigger risk, all of that to do that. But boy, I've never looked back.
Yeah. It's man. I got to tell you, man. Starting a business. My wife and I actually were having this discussion this morning. I was really fortunate to have great partners, right? Because partnerships are like marriage, and you've really got to be fundamentally aligned. And I'll say, like, to your point, we were never, when we were like very privately held, I started my business, I founded it, I brought a partner in because I was more visionary. I knew I needed integrators, and I brought a fellow Marine sergeant in, and then through acquisition, I picked up 2 other partners along the way. Man, we all like, you've hit on a couple things I think I just want to honor, right? Which is, we all recognized between each other our unique abilities and said, "That's your hat, that's your hat, that's your hat. I'm going to trust you to do what you do best, and while I do what I do best." And we really had that. We really had that win-win-win mindset as a partnership, which is great because it's nice to have partners, because going solo is tough. Like, you've got it all, on you, and you need things like strategic coach and Vistage and things like that to help, because it's really a lonely place. And I'd say the other part too, we were never bottom up, man. We were just, what do we got to do to deliver value? What are the problems? How do we solve them? And we said this, we said this, if not daily: do the right thing, the profits will come. If you're solving the right problems, you're providing the value, the profits will come. We never felt we needed to think in any other way like that. That's just what worked for us. And it was, and when you get in these environments where it's that, like, that bottom up, like, the only way you make money is to cut expenses. And Kiyosaki has a great quote, in one of his books, referring to, he calls them bean counters. He says, when bean counters get a hold of a business, it's done, because that's
Yeah,
that mindset. And
yeah,
and it's true. And it drives me bananas, because if you, the customers will tell you what they want, what's valuable, and the profits will come if you deliver on that value. And if you're of that mindset, it will drive you crazy when you're in environments that it's the opposite, and you feel
yeah.
you just aren't congruent. So
Yeah, I think there's a lot of concepts in entrepreneurship that are really counterintuitive,
yeah.
and a lot of us build businesses from, right. We build businesses from what we already know, maybe our experiences, maybe our relationships and Rolodex or something like that, right. But there's these things like just like you're talking about, like creating value. right? If you're focused on creating value for people, you're right. Financial rewards are really going to be a barometer of your success,
Yeah.
you know? But mostly in corporate America, people are doing it the complete opposite. It's all about just chasing the dollar. That's all
Right.
they're doing is chasing the dollar. And I think, then you eventually get capped out, doing that. And this is a terrible mindset
Yeah.
as well to really have that.
And what it is, it's I think what Covey says, like, you don't see the forest for the trees, right? When you're like, your focus is gross margin on a spreadsheet, you're you're not seeing the forest for the trees, man. And it's stuff that kind of really made me, once I sold my company and kind of was in that world, that level of finance and analysis, I was not having fun, because for me, like, my heart was screaming, like, we're focusing on the wrong thing. Like, we're spending 90-minute meetings on cells in a spreadsheet. Meanwhile, we've got service to deliver and value. Like, again, it just, I really had to kind of, I had to recognize that, what made me fulfilled was not, the numbers. I know you do
Right,
the right things, the numbers happen.
right,
You didn't need to go,
right.
let the
And there's
tail
also
wag the
this,
dog. Go ahead.
yeah. Yeah, there's also this approach, right? I think it's kind of like the Zig Ziglar approach, right? Which is all about serving others, And I think most people are always looking for what's in it for themselves,
Mm-hmm.
whether they go to a networking conference, a business meeting, or whatever. They're always looking at it from that perspective. But if you change your perspective and you figure out how many people can I actually help, how many people can I impact, it's amazing. You'll completely 10x your results, but it's a big shift in mindset.
Yeah, 100%. So we talked about Rich Dad Poor Dad. I guess, would you kind of, was there any other resources that you think impacted you, for this? Because you're right. This, back to finance, it is a mindset change. Wealth is a mindset change. What, any other resources that maybe you tune into or you feel like really impacted you in this area?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because a lot of this really is the psychology,
Yep.
right, of wealth and money, and I think, I mean, that's really an important thing, right? It's not sitting down looking at your financials. I mean, that's kind of the details of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the first thing you should really look at is, like, what is your vision,
Mm.
right? Where are you headed with this in life and everything, right? And then trying to figure out that the financial, you have to have the financial means to be able to fulfill that, right? Whether those are experiences or starting a business or creating a charity or things like that. So unfortunately for me, like, in 2000, I mean, there were not many resources at all.
Yeah.
There was nothing like Bigger Pockets. There was not like, blogs. I mean, it was all mostly just kind of, networking stuff. And and as good as Rich Dad was, it was so conceptual,
Yeah.
right? And I think it was really dumbed down, right, to the most simplistic, so that everybody could kind of get the concept, which was super super powerful. But I'm a higher fact finder, and high follow through, so I was looking for, what's the roadmap, what's
Yeah.
the blueprint, I get this, it makes sense, now I want to go implement it. But unfortunately at the time there were really not that many resources
Mm.
available. So that's why I said I just started consuming whatever I could. It was primarily books. I'm just constantly reading books, and books are such an amazing source of information if you think about it, right? Someone downloads their entire life into 250 pages, and you can consume all of those points of wisdom and insight. So primarily looking at just different books and things, and trying to put all of these things together. And again, I mean, and entrepreneurs will appreciate this, right? I mean, how many people, 98 people tell you no before someone says yes.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing on the financial, in the financial world. Everywhere I went, people told me, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. I just have a 401k. I put all my money in my 401k. I'm paying down my house. I'm following these things like, Dave Ramsey. I'm doing 529s for my kids.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we do. Right. Because, and I said, I just kept asking why, and kept being really inquisitive and kept learning. And, then tried to, again, when I take that forward, it's like, now I really tried to instantiate that into, our book and into a concept that people can actually take action on.
Yeah. And I guess what is that? Like, when you're talking to people, let's just say that are inquisitive, they want to, they know they're not on the right path. Like, what advice do you give them? Like, to start charting a better path. Where do you get them started? Where do you how do you mentor someone that's interested in that?
Yeah. So look, we have 4 simple steps into our holistic wealth strategy. The first one, well, and as you set that up, right, the first component of this is really creating your vision.
Mm.
If you don't have a target, you're going to miss every time. And this is something that should be really well thought through, with your spouse, with your family, so what kind of path you're going to be. Most people spend more time planning a vacation than they do their financial future.
Yeah.
Right. But you're really shortchanging yourself. So where do you want to be in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? What do things look like, for you and your family? I think that's absolutely critical. Then we go into the first phase, which is all about mindset. It's really your why. What makes you tick? Do you want to create some kind of amazing charity that, supports veterans? Is that, what drives you? Maybe you support a church. Maybe you want to create the next, Elon Musk type company, right? And
Sure.
be the next Tesla or something. What is it, right? That's your why. And this includes things like beliefs, right? Getting rid of limiting beliefs you might have had in the past through bad, influences.
Yeah.
This also involves your health, right? And we've talked about this, right, Dale, that having the performance and pushing yourself health wise. My goal is to live to 116. So what am I doing today, to be able to try to get there?
Now, where
Right.
does that
I'm
number come
looking
from
at,
for you? What's 116 significant for?
so I can, I can go into a little detail here. I mean, essentially what I looked at is, my, genetic age, my chronological age would probably take me to about 92 based on genetics and things like that. However, the majority of people, when they pass, it's because they've run out of money. All of their friends around them have, died, or all they're talking about is having health issues.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you've lost kind of that social impetus. And then people have lost like purpose,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're just waking up kind of, doing nothing. So my approach is, if I can improve those, so I never have to worry about money again, however old I am. I've always expanding my circle of relationships and people that inspire me, and things that I want to do. And also, I just don't believe in this entire concept of retirement. It makes absolutely no sense. That's from that. We live in a new age, right? Retirement is to stop doing what wasn't working before.
Yeah.
Right. I never want to stop working if it's the lifestyle that you just created,
Yeah.
right, for yourself, and then what energizes you. So I never want to stop. I want to continue to do that. So having that purpose, and then of course, think about the technological advantages. I mean, think about what's just changed in the past 10 years for us. So what could be possible for you, in the next 30 years with technology advancements? And I have a very strategic, part of our strategy here is also, it's all about building a team. Right. So the doctor on my team he's one of the top doctors in the DC area. He's focused strictly on integrative medicine, which is a very different approach. So it involves supplementation, lots of, blood work and analysis to see how you're doing. How are you performing under the hood?
Yeah.
If you're not measuring that today, you can't improve that.
Sure.
right? So I'm very into biohacking and different types of methods to not only increase my longevity but my vitality as well.
I love it.
So
We're
that's on
gonna
the
come.
health
We're gonna come
side.
back to that because I think there's a lot
Yeah.
there, and I wanna hear more from you on that. But I want to honor like you're eating your own dog food because you said like you've got to have a vision, right? And you're not going to hit a target you don't aim at. And you go, I'm going to live to 116. It's like there it is. Like that's exactly your point. That you're not. That's your goal, and you're going to we hear it, but it's true, man. You're going to manifest that because you have a vision. Like if you bring clarity to your vision, the odds that you're going to make it happen, So I just want to like say honor you for that because I think that's important, and I think having that vision helps. To your point of, I love that you started here because that why that you're talking about, like your why in having your vision is really what helps you persevere, because it's not going to be easy. These things that we want when we take charge of enacting and obtaining our vision, like it's going to be hard. And what you said with having it, I the only way I can explain it well, I think, is like imagine not having it, right? You're just, what I call the bobber in the ocean. You're just bobbing around. You're getting shoved around by the waves of life of the world. You're not really going anywhere. But if you had that vision, all of a sudden you start growing oars, and you start, maybe you're still a bobber, but now you're a bobber with oars, and you're starting to inch away, and you slowly grow and become more, and you have control. So I love it, man. I think it's awesome. But anyway, I'll let you get back to your four areas. That's great.
Yeah, yeah. And just to add on to mindset a little bit, I think, that's really value. It's like, your habits, right? Like, are your habits pushing you closer towards your vision?
Yeah.
Or are they, hindering you? So habits, goals, you're a product of the 5 people that you spend the most time with.
Yeah.
So, what does your circle look like? Right. So, those are all the things around mindset, that we kind of focus on first. And then we move into really increasing your IQ. And I would break that out into a couple of areas, which I would say definitely financial IQ, about learning some of these alternative strategies that we have in place to be able to grow your wealth. There's that mindset IQ, which is focusing on yourself. It's an evolutionary and dynamic process that ideally you're becoming a lifelong learner. You're
Yeah.
always learning. And how many people do we run into who say no, they feel like they know everything, right? But they're just capped.
Yeah.
I don't spend time with those kind of people.
Yeah.
Or people who complain.
Yeah.
They're not in my life. It's people who are always learning, always getting exposed to new ideas. And then also health IQ. Like I said, I mean, if you had your net worth was 100 million, but you had no health and you had cancer, how much would you pay, right, to solve cancer?
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be pretty massive, right? So I think health is just, so important, and that's kind of why we rank in that. And, this whole concept as well is really looking at yourself as the most important asset that you have, right? So why not think about even some of the top athletes? I think Kobe Bryant spends like over $1 million on his body alone a year. I mean, how much did you spend? I mean, I know I spend like in supplements and things, I probably spend almost as much as my grocery bill,
Sure.
looking at different things. But there's a lot of different ways that you can optimize there if you put a focus on it, right?
Right.
And looking at yourself is that core asset, which is a bit of a mindset shift.
Kobe
Um,
Bryant, who's passed, but he also talked a lot about mindfulness as well. Like again, it goes back. You might look at these athletes like Kobe Bryant was, or LeBron James, all these guys, and you think like they're just phenoms physically, talent wise, or whatever. But if you dig in and listen to them, they're saying the same stuff you are, just about their attention to their mindset, their health, and because it all matters. All those little things add up to the great things. It's just not their game. It's all of the above.
yeah, yeah. So we then would move into what we call like really setting up your infrastructure. So one of the key components that a lot of people don't realize, a lot of family offices are using these, ultra high net worth, is setting up something called the infinite banking concept, right? Which is essentially leveraging a dividend paying whole life insurance policy, where you can actually put money into this cash value policy. You get the benefits from it. Certainly, your death benefits that you would have. The money grows and compounds tax free. It can be passed to your heirs tax free. It also has an inherent asset protection built into it, right? So creditors cannot access this. And then the really cool concept around this is it's all about like becoming your own bank and having more control. So you can borrow against this policy, and you can actually put money in and then take it back out to go invest into a deal or something like that, or you could pay for your kids college with that. It And also the other thing this does is it does create a tax-free income stream for you, moving into your later years, or frankly whenever you want it, and you'll never outlive your money, right,
All the
putting it
while
in
it's
there.
growing, right? Like all the while
Exactly.
it's sitting there growing. And I think, can you talk quickly about what real growth potential is for money, right? Because a lot of people go, oh, I put my money in my savings account. Oh, or I do my mutual fund. Can you talk about that a little bit, and where that fits in, I'll say, the opportunity potential out there?
Yeah, so again, part of our thinking is that, and this is why we call it a strategy. When you have a strategy in place, we're actually looking for multi-dimensional, um, different aspects, right, of the strategy, where you're getting exponential type results because you're doing multiple things at the same time, right? Versus, again, we're just taught with the stock market, what's the ROI with that? You're making 9% this year. Last year, the market's up 12%, this and that. But look, the one thing that I would be sure I could bet on is that taxes will go up in the future. Okay. So if I can reposition my assets, number one, into completely tax efficient assets and reduce my tax liabilities, those gains could be massive. What are you paying for taxes? And when I started, I mean, we were, with our business, we were spending probably 40% in taxes, if not more. And now I have it down into very low double digits, and my goal is to hit zero
Yeah.
in taxes with this strategy. So just think about what that could mean for you in terms of dollars, right? Alone, right there, and that's a perpetual strategy, right? That's every year how much you could reduce your taxes. So that's very significant, while you're still driving, returns. Um, we also, focus on private equity type investments, right, which are fixed assets that are, we're holding for longer periods of time, like say 5 years, and doing things like apartment buildings, self storage. And so these types of assets you can invest in directly as a private investor, and they pay a cash flow that can be offset by the depreciation. So your cash flow can come in actually, tax free. You have equity growth opportunity through forced appreciation, where we'll do improvements to properties, things like that, that can grow the value in them as well. And so here, when you have multiple things, now you're looking at, this cash flow that's coming in, you're getting appreciation on the backside, you're getting the depreciation. And then if you cycle that back into your infinite banking setup, things just start kicking up. So that 20% return that you're making, if you add that IRR with the infinite banking, it's now, let's say, 23%. If you add the fact that it's kind of tax free, now you're up to, making a 38%, gain on that. So these things just continue to multiply the more and more you put them together, but it's got to be in this overall strategy, right?
Where can someone, because that's a lot. Where someone who needs to kind of learn more and start developing a strategy, where would you recommend them to start?
So we have a free copy of our book that we're happy to send anyone. We can link it in the show notes, but
Yeah.
essentially it's pantheoninvest.com/wealth hyphen strategy. And you could get a free copy of the book, and, also happy to give a free consultation, to learn more.
Yeah, great, awesome. Yeah, because it's a lot, and I think like we talked about it takes that mindset set shift, and you said it earlier, and it's worth repeating for the kids in the back, which is you got to be open. Like you got to open your mind up to say what I've been taught, this 401k stuff, put all my money in a savings account, like um, that's been institutionalized in a way, and there's so much more to your benefit long term, no matter where you are, like in life. You can change your mindset and thus change your wealth. And like you said, to kick the show off, and we're not saying get rich, we're saying be wealthy, be in control, and have personal freedom as a result.
Exactly.
How about so we were talking some of those vehicles, and what's next?
Yeah, so so that's really, I think, foundational, right? Is creating that infinite banking is really key. Also having a comprehensive tax strategy that really supports that, and the same thing with taxes. I fired 5 different accounting firms over the years of running businesses, and I couldn't get the right answer. All
Yeah.
they did was file my taxes. I kept paying them more and more money, and they didn't do anything the right way until I finally, found the right one. And now I know that, if you're making, a good bit of money, especially if you're an entrepreneur, you have, a net worth scaling to 10 million and up, you need a different strategy. It's
Yeah.
not just filing your taxes, right? So that's very huge, is setting that up, the tax strategy. And then we also talk about asset repositioning, right? So many people, I mean, I know a good friend of mine, an entrepreneur, exited, very big 8-figure exit. He sold 3 businesses. He's done really well. And what did he do? Well, my wife said, we want to pay off the house, right? Because, but that's following middle class advice, right? To pay off the house. I mean, because what's the rate of return on equity in your house? It's 0.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So you're not getting good leverage. So you want to take, anywhere that you have trapped equity, things like that, or you have non-performing assets, like things like 401ks, you can actually transition qualified money into, say, a self-directed IRA to then start investing into some of these private equity type investments. So that can be really powerful. And yeah, the repositioning is just key, so that you're creating a new foundation, a new framework from which you can grow and add a lot more velocity, right, to your overall strategy.
Yeah, and I love what you said there, because it plays on, with regard to advisors, I think it's important to know that we can't just defer, right? Like we can't have like what I call the sloth of mind. Like, I don't know all that stuff. I don't know taxes. I just give it all to my accountant. Like that's at your detriment, right? That's it, because I think what you're trying to say here is like, if you don't know the right questions to ask and you just defer, I don't know that stuff, and you are at their mercy, and they could be doing the wrong things and you have no idea, maybe until it's too late, or maybe you get wise later, or you finally start asking questions. So I think it's really important, to the growth, being that evergreen learner mindset, is that do you need to be a CPA? No, but you need to understand, how the tax system works, what opportunities are out there, because it comes at a cost. Ignorance comes at a cost, and if you don't know what your CPA should be doing, like you don't know what questions to be asking, and you can't guide them. And I found like knowing those things and asking them, actually sometimes they learn. So because sometimes you're working with a CPA who doesn't understand some of these tax, they're perfectly human like the rest of us. They don't know everything. But if you're studying these things and tax strategies and whatever, you can then ask questions and have have an intelligent conversation, right? Maybe an educated, and maybe you're wrong. Like maybe you just picked up on something that's noise, and the CPA is familiar with it, and now you can have an intelligent conversation. But the moral of the story is, I think, like you said with your doctor, like you say, like we need to know, like our advisors are there to advise us, but we can't just defer, and just fly blind along with them per se, and just have a sloth of mind and not be educated.
Yeah, 100%. And I'll give you a good way to look at it, right? Is that, again, this goes back to beliefs and what we were taught, right? Is that taxes are a penalty. Everyone has to pay taxes, and we're funding the schools, and that's what we're doing. But we were all W-2, for the most part at some point. So we paid our taxes, and there was not that much you can do. But again, going back to Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant, right? When you're a business owner and an investor, the majority of the tax code is actually a roadmap of incentives for people who follow it. So we invest. Why do we invest in apartment buildings? Well, the government wants us to create housing for people. So they're going to give us benefits to do that. That's why we invest there, right? That's why we get benefits. So, this is all completely legal stuff. It's just taking advantage and getting smart, right, on what's there. And when you start to look at the tax code in that way, that it's a roadmap of incentives, it's a completely different mindset, right, of what you can do.
It goes back to, right, wrong, or different. And this isn't a political show. When Trump was debating with Hillary, and she said, "You don't pay any taxes," and he goes, "That's because I'm smart." I looked at whoever was in the room. I said, 99% of the country is not going to get what he just said. Like that's going to go over
Right.
terribly, because there's this stereotype that he's like raping the system and whatever. I said, but he's right. Like he is intelligent. Goes back to the sloth of mind part of this. Like he is paying attention, and he's making sure he's maximizing his wealth and putting it to work. And that's back again to the mindset thing that you don't need to love the dude, but that was a correct statement. He's not paying taxes because he's intelligent to it, and it's all legal. It's not getting over on anything. He's just got the right strategy, as you mentioned, and there's
Right.
strategies to use and implement. So
Right. So yeah, so then if we move into the last phase, Dale, this is really all about taking action, and a lot of people can get paralysis by analysis and get kind of, stuck with some of these things. But what we want to do is actually create massive passive income. The typical financial planner has this investment thesis where, you're saving a large amount and then you're going to withdraw it in your later years. But what we're talking about is actually, very contradictory, which is creating this passive income nest egg as soon as you can to try to start driving off income. And what that does is it does a lot of things. So let's say you were starting a business, and you needed 12 months of runway right before you could get your business going. Well, what if you had enough passive income that was actually paying your mortgage at the time, right? That could help kind of bridge you, or whatever. Let's say maybe you had a medical issue or something like that. So creating alternative streams of income really de-risks you in life, right? When we have a lot of these challenges. And then at the same time, we still have this equity appreciation that's growing on the back end, so our golden goose keeps getting bigger. And I'll give you this very simple scenario, right? I mean, if you take, let's say you had amassed $4 million under a typical, planner model, right? $4 million, they tell you that you're going to pull out 4% a year. That's so you don't outlive your money, right? Well, you probably thought you might be living on more money, but that's what, 160K before taxes.
Mm.
And you probably don't have many deductions because they assume that, you're not going to have any deductions later on in life and that you're going to be in a lower tax bracket. but I don't know about you, but I want to be wealthier in the future rather than have less wealth.
Sure.
So you're at 4 million, you've got only 160K, which is more like maybe 120K, after taxes and fees and everything. That's what you're living on a month.
Yeah.
So if I take that same scenario and then we had 4 million in, let's say, these private equity syndications, right? And it's paying you a cash flow of 8%. You now have an income of 320K that's coming to you completely tax free because you have all of this tax efficiency. And oh, by the way, every 5 years, every couple of years, you're going to get that appreciation bump that's going up another 10 to 15%. So your 320K now keep getting a raise, right? And that's how you actually create legacy wealth as well, to pass on to your heirs and things. So why would you kill your golden goose? Right? Traditional theory is you're killing your golden goose. We want to keep feeding our golden goose and have it get bigger, and then it can help future generations.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's relatively simple, right? I don't want to say it's not complicated to a degree, but it's obtainable, so to speak. These strategies, it's obtainable. It comes down to, like I say, understanding it, seeking to understand it, and taking action. And that's where, like, the more you learn, the more confident you get, and the more confident you get, the more courage you have. More courage you have, the more likely you'll take action in the right direction, so to speak. So I know you're a bit of a high performer. So getting all this done, living to 116, what are some of your habits that, contribute most to your success?
Yeah, well, probably the biggest is, really my morning routine. I think I've really been, developing that over the years. I spend the day, as soon as I wake up, I have a gratitude practice and just kind of review in my head some things that I'm grateful for. I also will review the wins I had the previous day. So I kind of get myself into that, positive framework of, what then can I do next? I exercise very heavily. I'm a bit addicted. Right now, my primary sport is cycling. So I ride probably at least 150 miles a week. Put on more miles on my bike than my car every year. But that's really great for me because I get outside, right? And I'm outside, I'm in nature. It's very dynamic, right? There's speed and there's things going on. I do a lot of high intensity intervals as well. So that, really gets all systems firing and performing. And then after that, I will do a meditation practice. I do a little bit of yoga and then do some meditation. And meditation I've got to say, is just one of the absolute top skills that you could actually learn in life. I wish I had only started younger, and I've offered for my kids to get them going. I've paid them money, everything. Just please, meditate. It's the most powerful. Just 12 minutes a day, and you get so much, clarity and things, to start your day. It's very empowering. So I work on that, and then I do a little journaling as well. So I'm very intentional about my day. I focus on, 3 things that are critical that I need to get done in a day. What are the most important? And I have a weekly planner that supports that as well, like 3 of the most critical things I want to get done in the week. And then I think it really sets you up for living a very intentional life, right? And supporting, again, that vision. So I'm creating those habits and setting up the right beliefs and the right mindset to live the vision of, the life that I'm trying to build.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. With regard to, like, the positive framing, because I that seems a little bit unique in a way. What kind of brought that in, and kind of what did it do for you? Like, what were you solving for when that became a part of your practice?
Yeah, so I'll have to give credit to Strategic Coach for that.
Mm,
So there's basically, and that's all about thinking exercises, right? We talk about thinking about your thinking, and there's this little exercise that I will do when I start my Monday morning. And by the way, I haven't looked at my phone, I haven't looked at my PC, anything before. I do all of those things, but on a Monday morning, I'll take out my journal and then I'll go through, what were my biggest wins the week prior, and
mm,
I'll journal, what was the win, why was it important, and then there's another section is, okay, well, what more can I do next, right? What's the follow on? Can I build from that momentum? So you're creating this completely positive mindset of building from this momentum that you've had. What can I achieve next? And doing that, and then you can do that on a daily thing. And I mean, here's another great habit I've kind of evolved from that is, when I'll go for a walk with my wife or when we catch up, we start our conversation with, what were your top 3 wins for the day?
mm.
It completely changes the dynamic of how you have the conversation. And I do it with folks on our team as well. It's the first thing we talk about. What was your biggest win that you had, last week or yesterday, since we talked,
Right.
and just shifting that mindset towards that positive focus is huge. Versus, in corporate, right? Most people want to talk about what went wrong.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. So, and thank you for elaborating on that, because I think it's key, right? It's not all about just exercise and whatever. Like, it starts with that mindset, man. And I love that. And so, what about, so kind of bringing this thing on the home stretch here? What are you working on now? What's got you excited?
Oh yeah, Dale. Boy, super excited about this year, and again, it's kind of all these things we've been talking about, right? It's all about creating value for people. So I'm just so excited about that. We certainly have a lot of private equity deals. We have a lot of deal flow that's coming out. We actually have a Bitcoin mining fund that's just being released here next week, which I'm really excited about. It's got some incredible economics to it. We've also creating some new partnerships with some strategic family offices to be able to, again, help people set up this infrastructure for themselves. The infinite banking portion, as well as getting access, to some of the best deals and everything. So yeah, we're excited about this year. Oh, and I'm also relaunching the book as well, the Holistic Wealth Strategy. So I'm underway working with a writer on this, and hopefully that will come out at the end of the year.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. So, where can people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, just we could put it in the show notes, but if you'd like a free copy of the book, it would be pantheoninvest.com/wealth hyphen strategy. So, feel free to download that. People can connect with me on LinkedIn. We also have a podcast as well called Wealth Strategy Secrets of the Ultra Wealthy, which Dale was on, had a great time connecting with Dale on that. So feel free to reach out.
Cool. Awesome. Dave, man, it's been an honor, and I love talking with you on all these things. And again, to your book's point, like, it's holistic, man. It's all of it. It's not just one thing. It's everything, man. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and everything you've learned. And I'm look forward to keeping in touch.
Awesome. Thanks, Dale.
Thank you.